We are live now with Donna Weber, who will be a guest today in our episode 4 of our customer success expert series. And Donna is actually the author of Onboarding Matters. I hope you can see this. And we are going to talk a little bit about the book and a lot of other things. But let me just pause and let Donna introduce herself.
Hi, thank you for including me, Shankar. My name is Donna Weber. I'm based in Northern California, just north of San Francisco in Marin County, and I'm excited to help you keep your customers throughout your implementations and beyond.
Excellent. So just to kind of give you the listeners a little bit how we kind of came about with the what we're going to talk about, because as everyone knows that onboarding is a big topic. There are many different things, and so Donna was kind enough to kind of guide through an agenda which we felt would give the listeners maximum bang for the buck, because in a short session you cannot talk about everything onboarding, right? It's so
I
much.
could talk
So
about it
we
all day.
actually we can talk about it all day and then some. And so but people have lives, people have customers to go back to, and everything else. So we'll keep it kind of short and hit upon the main points here. Okay, so with having said that, Donna, let's talk about the trough of disillusionment, and if you can talk about what is it and what you are referring to, and why should people be aware of it.
Absolutely. Now, the trough of the trough of disillusionment comes from the Gartner hype cycle, which is when there's new products, whenever there's, let's say, a new technology, people get excited. You go to that show in Las Vegas, the Consumer Electronics Show, right? CES, you get excited, there's all this hype, but then the reality fails to meet all that hype and expectations. In a similar way, customers are going through the sales cycle. They get really excited for your products. And then, especially if you have a complex business to business solution, guess what? It takes time and effort to implement. So they get excited, they sign the deal, they pay their money, and then they sit around waiting and hoping. And then what happens is they fall into this trough of disillusionment. And you don't want your customers to go there, because what happens is they start dwelling in fear, doubt, buyer's remorse, right? They ruminate around all these worst case scenarios. And if they stick around, you're going to have to struggle to win back their love. But oftentimes they pause and cancel their payments.
Yeah, no, so that's a great point, because I think anyone who has been in CSM onboarding implementation or CS ops has seen some of the things you refer to, because customers are impatient by nature, right? They spend the money, they signed on the dotted lines, and now they want something to show for it.
Yeah, everyone wants
For
instant gratification, especially these days.
So yeah, let's talk about, you referred to some of them already. Like, what are the, some of the causes and some of the impacts of this, short term, mid term, long term
Yeah.
on customer
Well, some of
relationships.
the causes are that we dive right into, we'll talk about the problems and then we'll talk about some of the solutions. Uh, 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 Generally, especially I'm talking about B2B tech, generally people dive right into the technical, the tactical. Sometimes that can really overwhelm people. They might not kind of know what was purchased and why. What I see is on the product development side, companies have really shifted to this agile and iterative way of developing their products. They might, they might have releases every 2 to 6 weeks, right? That's becoming more common. But on the post sales side, I'm just going to have a sip of water to clear my throat. On the post sales side, implementations can take weeks and months. And so we've gone from this agile and iterative approach, this really going through sprints, to these monolithic deployments. So that's a big pain. They're just sitting around waiting. And then, they don't see the big picture. They're not seeing why. They don't understand where this fits into their world. and they're just kind of being thrown technology at them. So those are some of the problems. And they also don't know their part. They don't know how they're supposed to show up. They don't know when and where and how they're supposed to be accountable. So they don't know how to engage. So those are another issue.
So obviously, there is a cost to a lot of these things. So what are like the various ways you can look at the costs of failed implementations? Because from the executive level, they are more interested in dollars and cents, right? I mean, from CSM perspective or the onboarding implementation team perspective, it's more of talking to people and in the trenches, and they have different little focus, and they want to accomplish different things. But if you were to talk to an executive team, what would you like? How would someone explain the cost of this trough of disillusionment during onboarding?
Well, there's a very high cost. And what I'm seeing, Shankar, is that companies are spending a lot of time and money and special care onboarding and implementing new customers. But if they don't get through that trough of disillusionment, not only are they pouring money down the drain through this onboarding phase, when you add in the cost of acquisition, and if the customer churns in that first year, they haven't made the money to break even. They're actually losing money, and it's delaying profits, and it's really impacting their margins. So as an executive, you really need to pay attention to these costs, because if you're not keeping your customers, you're really losing money that you may not be aware of. A lot of
Yeah, no, that's
a lot of companies are
go ahead.
really aware of their customer acquisition costs, and they know how long it takes to break even. But if they're not paying attention to all the time and effort it takes to get through implementation, to get a successful customer, then they're not seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, no. I mean, just a small, something from my past. I've had conversations where, the executives are like, oh, we, paid out the incentives for the sales team to bring this in, and it's still not onboarded, and you're telling me now they're churning. So it's kind of, it's one of those things that it has not just the strategic implications, but a very tactical quarterly type of impact to the bottom line for a business, especially a B2B business,
Yeah,
where some of
absolutely.
these deals can be multi-year deals.
Yeah, I know companies that don't comp the sales reps until onboarding is complete.
Yeah, so actually, that is something that has started happening. Are you seeing more and more of that happening, or is
Probably
it still
not
kind of?
enough. I mean, during this year, unfortunately, I see a lot of companies just getting frantic acquiring new logos. But sometimes those logos, if they're a poor fit, then that's another reason why implementations cause a lot of problems. If they're a poor fit, you're going to be spending a lot of time and effort trying to cram your product into a company that doesn't really, isn't an ideal client, and they're likely to churn. So then they're so busy looking at the bookings, but not really looking at how to keep their customers. It's a real problem.
And do you recommend that sales be a part of onboarding, or what should be the kind of their role
Yeah, so
during
let's talk
onboarding?
about the antidote to the trough of disillusionment. So one of
Right.
the first things is to start with the big picture. Now, you might have heard of Simon Sinek, and he says start with why. The reason why we start with why, which is the big picture, is that relates to the limbic part of the brain. And so even though you might jump in and get ready to do all this awesome implementation stuff, the brain can't process it unless you start with why, unless you give them the big picture, the concepts and the context, right? So even though the buyers might have seen the why from the sales reps, oftentimes those project teams, the implementation teams on the customer side haven't received that. They just dive in and they're supposed to roll up their sleeves and be technical and fit it in across all their other priorities. So they might resent you. They might not know why this was purchased. They might feel like it's another thing to add to their plate. They might worry that it's going to, replace their job. So you need to start with why, because that's going to really help people get on board with you while you onboard them. Next, you really
Yeah.
want to look at quick wins. So rather than having these monolithic deployments, how can you deliver value as quickly as possible and then throughout a whole value journey? Every time a person obtains value, it releases endorphins in their brains, and endorphins are those feel good chemicals. So just like when you get that runner's high or after you work out really hard, you feel good, even though it was a lot of effort exerted, you're going to feel good. So that's what we want to do. We want to help our customers, even though there might be effort required during the onboarding and during the implementation. We want to get them to some value very quickly so they feel good. They think, hey, when I work with you, I feel good, even though there's effort required. And then that's going to keep them engaged and accountable. And then I really like to build, especially in a higher touch engagement, I really like to create a success plan, and that helps us to help them talk about the big picture, go through what it's kind of like a meta conversation before we dive into all the details. This is how we're going to work together. This is what I expect from you. These are the timelines. This is who's responsible, who's accountable, etc. And then, hey, let's talk about some of those quick wins so we can really get to value that is meaningful for you.
No, excellent point, Donna. So, in terms of quick win or small wins, as you call it in the book, I mean, should that be the responsibility of CSM, or should it be a responsibility of the implementation team, or should that be something that is a team effort? And people are like, okay, because no two implementations are the same, and people's expectations are different. So, is it like a cookie cutter approach where you say, okay, I'm going to deploy this, so the small win is A, B, and C, and you just kind of walk the onboarding customer through that? Or is that going to be different for every single implementation?
Well, so it really depends on your product and on your customers. But I like to use the 80-20 rule. So the more you keep every customer as a special snowflake, the harder it is for you to scale, the more expensive it's going to be to work with every customer, the longer your implementations are going to take. So you might have a look at, well, you might, I like to tell people to listen to their customers. So start with interviewing 5 to 10 customers and find out what would be a great initial aha moment or magic moment or a quick win. And then once you start learning from customers, then define, I like to start with like 1 to 3 options. So let's say, Shankar, I like to use analogies like going to the gym. So let's say you just started working with me. I'm your personal trainer. And rather than just saying, hey, what do you feel like doing? We could talk about some common goals when I work with people kind of in your demographic, right? So, sometimes they want to lose weight. Sometimes they're training for a marathon, right? They just want to be able to be more flexible. So there might be three options. And I give you, we're going to start with one option. It doesn't mean the other options aren't considered, but we're going to start with one. And then ideally, you create a methodology and with some scalable content to help each customer reach those goals, reach those wins very quickly. So you create kind of like just like you go to a restaurant, you don't just say, hey, I want you to cook me this. There's options. You get to choose within the options. You may say, look, I'm gluten-free, which I am. Can you make that without the bread? But I don't want any croutons on my salad, So there might be things you might tailor a little bit, but you're giving them an a la carte menu to choose from. And then you create that way that you can produce those wins very quickly.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I think starting from scratch every single time is probably not scalable because, as you
It's
said,
expensive.
referred to earlier, and especially these days with everyone watching the economy and interest rates and everything else, the anything has to be scalable for it to be
Yeah.
adopted.
And
So one
oh,
thing,
I'm just going to interrupt. And so you asked whose job is that? Well, I would say it's a team effort. So for example, I worked at a company where it was very complex, and the implementation could take 9 to 12 to even 18 months. And so we brought together the customer success team, and onboarding, and we talked about, what could be, how we could get them to quick wins. And what we did in this case was we defined 3 prototypes, because we had to embed our solution in their products. So it took a long time. And so what we did was we defined prototypes they could get to in about 30 days. And then the customer teams could celebrate the wins. They could show the stakeholders, "Hey, Shankar, look what we built," and that everyone can give their high fives and celebrate that they bought your product. And then we worked with the customer education team to build some self-paced content, so the CSMs could guide the users in some self-paced way to get to that more quickly.
No, excellent point. So, have you run into a situation where a small win for the person who is actually driving the onboarding from the customer side is may not be 100% in alignment with the expectation from the executives at the CXO level at the customer side, because they were hoping to do this big umbrella, big ticket thing, and the person you're working with is excited about just doing 2 things that are a pain for them, quickly, and then they are really happy. But when you go present it to people at CXO level, they're like, okay, that's all well and good,
Yeah.
but what about my thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I laugh because that is very familiar. And that's something that we address in the success plan. So during that meeting, and if you go to my website, donnaweber.com, you can I have a template for success plan you can download. What happens is when I meet with companies, and I do this myself because I've fell into those issues working with companies. So when I work with companies, we go over what the goal is. And usually I have talked about it with the buyer, with the CEO, the chief customer officer. And so then when we've got the project team there, we talk about what the goals are, and we clarify them and validate them and fine tune them. I've had them say, "That's not a realistic goal. This should be there instead." And we have that conversation. And then secondly, in the success plan, we talk about blockers, challenges, like what are some blockers to our success and how will we deal with them? So we define a risk management and escalation plan. And then the moment, when I see there are issues coming up, I call my buyer and we address them immediately. So I have had people derail the projects. I've had them focused on the wrong thing. And rather than waiting and hoping that gets resolved, I call up and, I get their mobile number. I call them up and we address it and immediately.
Yeah, excellent. So actually, you hit upon some great points, and sometimes, with the best efforts of the team and the CSM and everybody else, things start to fail, right? So, what are some of the ways you would recommend that of implementation that is going the wrong direction? Like, what do you do to put the brakes, take a U, and then go back right up and make it a successful implementation?
Well, I like to go back to that success plan. So, for example, I had that with a company. We really were having a lot of issues, and we actually had to redefine the scope of what we were doing. So their priorities shifted from when I was working with a buyer, and we've defined a whole new team to work with and a whole new set of priorities. And we just put the brakes on and redefined where we were going and why. The thing is, when you do that big picture stuff, when you start with why, when you focus on quick wins, when you do the success plan, then you have a relationship with the people. And so remember, it's not just about technology, it's about people getting value from your solution. And so when you have a relationship, the studies and research show that even though things don't go perfectly, people are more willing to kind of, be flexible and be more understanding if they have a relationship with you. If they don't, then it's going to be harder to recover from that. And so that's why when you start with that big picture, it engages like the lizard part of their brain, which is the part that deals with, first impressions, evaluating, is this safe? Am I in danger? Are you a friend or foe? So we have to address all that stuff up front. Even though it seemed kind of silly, it's all very subconscious. And then when I know that you're a safe person to work with, then I'm going to be, if things start to tank, I still trust you, and I trust that you're going to turn this around. So that's why I really encourage companies to slow down, because when you do, it actually really resolves a lot of stuff downstream. So whenever there's issues with implementation and onboarding, I always look upstream and address things earlier.
Yeah, no. I mean, the excellent point, Don. I mean, I think many times we get so caught up in technology that we forget about the human relationship part of it. And you need air cover, because any implementation, especially a B2B, is going to go through its twists and turns, and sometimes people will just are not able to keep up.
Yeah,
And that's where.
yeah, and just like going to the gym, let's say you say, "Hey, I'm training for a marathon." I might say, "Great, you might really enjoy the runs until you get to about 10 miles, and then after that, you're going to be cursing me every mile." And I might tell you that, but once you get to 15 miles, then it starts to get easier again. So sometimes if you have complex and challenging implementations, tell them, hey, you're gonna. A colleague of mine calls it the valley of despair. Let them know, here's the journey ahead. Just like when you work out, your muscles are going to be sore, you're going to be aching and cursing me. Let them know, hey, things are going to we're going to get you to this quick win, but then it's going to feel really painful. But don't worry, we're going to get through that. And then they can see kind of, okay, but we get through that. And then there's there's a win beyond that. So that's why again, keep lifting things up and helping people see that bigger journey and where they are in
Yeah,
it,
no,
and where they are in it. I have a little visual that I create when I work with companies. It shows the journey that we're working on, and then I just have a little highlight of the phase. So I have several stages, and I find people come to meetings and they're overwhelmed. They've probably raced onto the Zoom from a prior meeting. They've got one right after. They don't even know what's going on half the time. And so just by giving them a little visual to show, here's where we've come from, here's where we are, here's where we're going, I see them like neurologically like relax. So take the time just to let them know, this is where we are, this is what we, celebrate all the great things you've done already, and then this is where we're going next.
Yeah. So one thing, Donna, just to add to what you said, is that many times I've seen from my experience that the people who are kind of driving the onboarding from the customer side, they're still doing their day jobs, as they say, and the management has given them this as an additional responsibility. And I think a lot of times the implementation teams should be aware of that they do have other customers to work with. They still have presentations to prepare, QBRs to deliver, be in product related discussions and all of that. In addition to that, they're doing this onboarding. So it's kind of a little bit of empathy in terms
Yeah.
of being aware of what is going on in their lives
Yeah.
to some
Yeah,
extent.
I've had companies where, the CEO has a plan and a timeline. And when I meet with the project team, they're like, we're releasing a new product in August. We can't meet at all. Okay, well then we gotta, that's where that success plan comes in. Great. Well, we'll do a kickoff, and then we're gonna, put things on hold, and we get realistic, because executives are often pushing because they don't see all the other things often in play. They have something in mind, or somebody's going to be on paternity leave, or for example, one company I'm working with, the head of customer success, he wants to get started on something, but the head of product is saying our product isn't ready yet. So we've got to have these conversations.
No, fair point. Fair point. I mean, I think that happens more often than
Yeah,
people
and if
realize.
all you do is cram your product down their throats, they're going to churn, because you're not seeing what they want and need. So when you have those conversations, you're going to help them, reach those goals. And again, it might be delayed. You might need to slow down at the beginning to speed up and to keep those customers beyond onboarding.
Yeah, I know. Excellent points. So, I mean, I think we talked about a lot of great stuff here. We went through the valley of despair, the trough of disillusionment, and some of the ways that quick ways, small wins in identifying these things and how to turn around, some of these implementations that might be, I wouldn't use the word jeopardy, but which might need extra love and care to get them across the finish line, and a lot of the things that you mentioned. And I know that in the book there's a lot more in there, and I would like to encourage readers to get hold of a copy and spend a cup of your favorite beverage. A non-alcoholic probably is better because there is some some heavy stuff in here, and get become the ninja, onboarding ninja that you always wanted to be. So anyway, Don, I will let you kind of wrap up in terms of next steps and the things, actions and quick wins and everything else that the CSM and implementation teams can do.
Well, this is what you need to do. So after this meeting, start thinking about 5 to 10 customers you can listen to find out what a quick win would mean for them. Start to, you can start with one quick win and just see, how you can create some value for customers very quickly. And sometimes that's not just about your product. It might be helping them get the right concepts, context, and mindset. So that might be training. Might help them so that they're ready the minute your product is deployed. They're ready to run off and be successful. Rather, a lot of companies wait till the product's deployed till they start helping them get that mindset. And then, so listen to customers and then start defining scalable ways that you can reach that quickly. If you go to donnaweber.com, that's DonnaWeber.com, you go to resources, you can access my success plan template, and I'm here to help. I've got lots of articles, I've got tools and templates. I also have next level coaching and consulting engagements, as well as my orchestrated onboarding master to help you get you to the next level so you get your customers to the next level.
Thank you so much for your time, Donna. I think it was great, information that you provided to the listeners, and for the people listening, follow me on various social channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And if you're interested in being a guest, please let me know, and then we can touch base and figure something out. Thank you once again.
Well, thank you. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Sounds good. Will do. Thank you.